could join us today. We're going to spend about 20 minutes going over what we view as the end of year processes that need to be taken care of with your parts department as we move forward and close the year out.
Hey, thanks again for taking time this morning to join us. We're excited to start off our first webinar series on end of year. So as Kent said, we're going to talk about some parts department end of year prep, and this will be a pretty high level overview. If you have questions about anything, Kent's email's at the end of this, and you can always reach out to info@keyadvisors.com and ask us any questions as well.
Oh, in addition to that, there's a questions option here in GoToWebinar. You can just type in your question and I'll feed that to Keith and Kent.
Great.
So it's pretty basic what we're going to talk about today. We're going to, as Keith said, it's going to be fairly high level. We're going to talk about what needs to be done for the end of the year. Beyond that, we're going to go into why it's important. And then finally, we've got two specific items that we'll get into. Obviously, the physical inventory, which you may or may not do on an annual basis, and then any ongoing processes and controls that may be identified coming out of the physical inventory process. So the first thing that we're talking about here will be the physical inventory. Beyond that, then we'll move into, after physical inventory, it will be the reconciliation that needs to be done between the physical inventory and the general ledger account. Following the physical inventory and the reconciliation, looking at the evaluation of the inventory results, and finally resolving any problems that are found throughout the inventory process.
Hey, Kim, before we start going through the detail that you have there on the screen, how many physical inventories in the past year, maybe in the past 5 years, do you think we've had the chance to observe?
I guess we've probably been a part of at least 15 to 20.
Yeah, and I think that we get the chance to follow up behind some of these as well. And over the course of probably the past 10 years, we've probably done 100 or so of these things. And probably some of the things that just observations that we see going into this, I think would probably be helpful for our audience as well. I mean, what are some of the observations you've seen as we go into doing these things?
I think the biggest observation I would have, and if you received the two-page process on physical inventory preparation that we sent out, I believe it was last week, a lot of it comes down to the preparation for the physical inventory. Many times parts departments just aren't ready to do the actual physical. And in some cases, I know in the last year, we've gotten started with the physical, and because they weren't prepared, we ended up having to stop the physical inventory process altogether.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that I would see is one is, quote, it's a magic day, when they do this physical. In reality, is the ongoing prep is not done. It might be done 2 weeks in advance, and it's still pretty haphazard. And like you said, I know we shut down one inventory, and we've done that on several occasions. The ones that are prepped for, though, boy, they just go like clockwork, and typically you start finding some wonderful things in those as you do them as well.
Yeah, you mentioned the magic day. It's actually, honestly, the magic day is the other 300 and we'll call it 58 days of the year. Yeah. The last week of physical inventory and then the week following that can be, if you're doing the other stuff, goes pretty simple.
Yeah. Let's tell them about what we're thinking here. That's important.
So the first bullet point talks about accuracy of part numbers and the quantities that are in stock and on hand. So what we're talking about is, as we do the physical inventory itself, we want to make sure that obviously the part numbers that are showing up and that we're counting, that we've got the correct part number in the system. And right along with that, we want to make sure that obviously that the correct quantities are shown on hand. That what we have in the bin matches what the system says we have. The next item is accuracy of inventory investment. So we're talking about here the reconciliation of the two different physical inventories. We have the physical inventory, we have the general ledger inventory.
Yeah, and I know that's a lot of times the only reason we do this, but I think there's, as you pointed out on the slide, there's a lot of other reasons that we're going to do this. That reconciliation sometimes is a challenge, and it's depending on which DMS you have and some other things that flow into that.
And certainly, as we talked about, and we'll get into later, if we're doing a reconciliation on a monthly basis, that reconciliation at the end of the year for the physical inventory goes a whole lot easier as well.
Yeah.
It has the potential to.
Yeah, I know that you've also talked about identifying some of these process breakdowns. I think that in establishing the processes going forward, I think that's the most important piece of this whole thing is identifying what's broken and what worked and how do we fix the stuff that's broken.
Yeah, so it's not only the inventory, physical inventory itself is not only used as a time to get these numbers right, but it's a chance to make sure that we get our department right or departments right moving forward into the next year.
Yeah.
What can we do better?
So it's I know that as we've done and been associated with all of the physical inventories we've done, and then our large interventions, I know this prep thing and for the physical and even after the inventory is really important. I know one of the questions that we get, the prep time, I think is probably what, a 6-week period in front of the inventory.
It can be.
Yeah, and I think we've put together a pretty good prep list of, if somebody'd like to get that list, Heidi, how would they get that, our inventory prep list from us?
They can email info@Key Advisors and we'll send that out.
Okay. I know that one of the questions that comes up, Kent, when we had it from one customer this week was, hey, let's delete all the part numbers that have 0 on hand. Thoughts on that?
I guess my question is, why would you want to delete those part numbers? Because we've spent probably at least the last 12 months recording all those numbers, making sure that we're getting good demand history into our system.
Yeah.
And with the click of 1 or 2 buttons, we've just lost everything that we've worked pretty hard to get.
I think that, a long time ago when space was limited, getting all the numbers that had nothing, no history or zeros deleted, but I don't know that's much of the case anymore. So we've got a preparation for inventory that's important. It's looking at negative on hands and parts with no bin and making sure our labels are right, the parts are in the right place. You've got a pretty good list, I know, Kent, that we put together on this 2 months prior, 2 weeks prior. That bin check and getting the bins organized appears to be the most important piece of the whole thing.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes it's just as simple as making sure that we've got the aisleways clear.
Oh, yeah.
So we can actually get to the parts easily.
Okay. When we do the physical inventory, any thoughts on when we do the physical inventory itself? Any hints on that we might have?
Certainly, it needs to be at a time when you can get your team all together to be there. If hunting season is a big thing in where your dealership is located, maybe you don't do your physical inventory when folks are getting ready to go hunting.
That's probably true. I think one of the other, I know you've commented on this many times, is just getting people that know how to count, not just with their fingers and toes, but knowing how to count a part.
Yeah.
The bag quantities and making sure they look in the box and to shake the box to see if there's something in the box.
Yeah. Well, and to be able to look, and if we know that it's a part that might have a core attached to it, make sure that we didn't put the dirty core up
Yeah,
in our inventory as opposed to putting it into the dirty core inventory.
I know that after the inventory is done, after the counts are done, that plus minus report or errors report or whatever the DMS calls it, pretty important. I think we run it down to $5. Is that right?
We have, yeah.
And I think we're looking for something around a 5% variance, and then we on piece counts, not on dollars. So we're looking at absolute values, and if they've got something over, I don't even know, it's 5%, maybe 2%, that we start really questioning the quality of the inventory. And I know that one of the things that we always say is, hey, don't just look at the results after the inventory, look at all the prep cleanup that's been done as well, all the errors and adjustments have made, and then you'll get an idea of what the quality of the inventory was way before you ever started. Let's talk about some of the ongoing processes, Ken, if you don't mind.
Well, the first item that we've mentioned there is inventory integrity. And truly what we're talking about there is, making sure that not just on that 1 or 2 days a year that we perform a physical inventory, that the counts are correct, but that, 98% of the time, each day of the year, that when we look up a part number and it says that I've got 2 on hand, that I can feel with confidence that I've got those 2 sitting back there like it says I do.
I think that idea of, we were on the prior slide and we probably skipped over it a little too much, but this whole after inventory thing, the reconciliation process is really important. And identifying the outstanding items, the returns, the packing slips that haven't been posted. You'll see a lot of accounting errors that come through in that. I know that's part of your balance sheet integrity thing, but I think that, your point of the accuracy of the inventory, starting to look at those plus minuses at the end of the inventory. Why did they get caused? We can learn a lot from that. Yeah. And you shoot for 98% accuracy on that?
Yes.
That's a pretty tough deal. I mean, it's they got to do a lot of work every day to get to that point.
They do.
What's the value of doing that?
Well, certainly number one, it increases our customer satisfaction.
Okay.
If we know that we've got that part there, now if we tell the customer to come on down to pick that part up, we can feel pretty good about them making that trip in.
Okay.
Certainly, it helps the system, whether it's the DMS that's suggesting the stock orders or if it's a vendor managed inventory. Those 2 systems will know, hey, if that really is a stocking part and we're down to the quantity that it needs to be reordered, we can feel good about it being reordered.
So this is a lot more than just my inventory being right. It's got impacts all along the chain for me then.
It does. It does.
The balance sheet integrity thing I think is interesting too. We talked about the reconciliation at the end of the physical, from a former CFO, COO point of view, controller point of view for myself. It seems to me like that's always the focal point of the inventory. But what I'm kind of getting from you is there's a lot more than just the reconciliation between the general ledger and the physical. There's a lot we can learn from it, but I still want to make sure that my dollar values are right, and we get the question a lot about what's an acceptable variance. And I think my answer is 0 is the acceptable variance. If you're plus or minus, it means you had some problem happen, and whether it's receiving issues or count issues or costing issues, that balance sheet integrity piece is not just a reconciliation. It should point out some other opportunities and process issues. I know a long time ago, I went through an issue where we were significantly off, and probably looking at it, it wasn't necessarily the parts manager's fault we were off. It was a lot of accounting things. Mm-hmm. So it gives us a chance to challenge in what's in accounting as well. So I guess encouraging our listeners to think about not just the inventory integrity, plus minuses, and doing our bin counts every day, the negative on hands, the no costs, the no bins and stock outs and all that stuff you talked about, was starting to think about also what are accounting issues that we're facing. Are we costing parts right? And are we, did we put something into the inventory that didn't belong there? Did we put brochures in there that shouldn't belong? So, Kent, let's kind of recap what, this has been just 20 minutes of joyousness of talking about inventories and physical and end of year prep for parts. One of the things we didn't talk about though was this idea of, hey, I've got some old parts on hand. What do I do with those old parts? There's no value on them. Any thoughts on that?
Well, they're probably not doing you any favors, both from, if you look at what your inventory value is, they're worth nothing at that point.
I've got $20,000 on them. That means I'm gonna lose 20 grand.
You've already lost it. You've already made the investment.
Okay.
And they may be taking up valuable space in your inventory on the shelves.
Okay.
Yourself.
Okay. Maybe talk to my tax advisor about that then?
Yeah.
Okay. So, this is a process that needs to be done every year. I think what I've learned going forward, as we've done this for a long time, is that this is not just an end of year task. It's an everyday task of prepping this inventory.
Should be, yes.
And looking at the accounting processes certainly needs to be done for the end of the year, and it gives us a value to be done or that we can tie to, and gives us an accurate view of what's on the shelf and what's on the books. But there's a lot more to this than just getting that balancing act done. There's a lot of operational things that come through this as well. Yeah. So I think this is a really important thing at the end of the year to start to understand and to be aware of. Prep is the most important piece of this.
Yeah.
In terms of doing the physical.
Yeah, and whether it's the prep at the beginning or if it's identifying those ongoing processes and controls, it's important to remember, as a parts manager, as a fixed ops manager, you're not in this just on your own. You've got a team that can help you with this.
Okay.
And if you have, let's say you have a receiving issue, the people that are receiving the parts probably understand the issue and can help you fix the problem rather than you trying to solve it all by yourself.
So Kent, we've probably got a couple of minutes left here. We can talk about horror stories all day, but you got an example of one of these that's just gone really, really well, of a dealer that's just latched onto these processes and maybe not done away with the physical inventory at the end of the year, but this just becomes a culture, a way of life for them.
Well, I think I do. I have seen dealers that have really embraced the cycle count procedure, okay, for instance, and what they have, by participating in cycle counts on a daily basis, they've not only seen that part of it their inventory value has decreased, but the number of part numbers that they're stocking may have actually increased.
So why would that be important to me?
Well, so they're able to fill the customer's needs for that part when they need the part more often.
So again, from an accounting point of view, what's that do for me then? If I'm doing these cycle counts and that type of story in terms of the physical, what does it do for me from an accounting standpoint?
Well, one of the things that I see I believe is that it takes some of that variance out of it. We don't have the high highs and the low lows where we're off a whole lot.
Okay.
It narrows it.
Okay.
So what about you? What have you seen?
I think the one customer I think of ours that I've seen do this well is that they've really become very strong at keeping their inventory accurate. And when they get to the end of the year, they don't go away from it every year, but they don't do a physical every year. and their outside accountants test it, but it's accurate. And so they've got man hours that they're relieving, but from an operational standpoint, better fill rate, better ordering. The counter people believe that inventory, and from the accounting side, they're always keeping it trued up because of making the adjusting entries as they're going. I think what they found was, to start it though, they had to get the prep work done to do a really good physical.
Yeah.
They had to be ready to do a good physical and start to put the processes in place as they move forward.
And really, the prep work is the stuff that
That's what we do every day
if we
anyway.
did that anyway, it takes place,
Yeah.
and it gets better.
So I guess one other just piece of advice is, all of your DMS providers give you really good checklists to go by in doing your DMS, whoever it is, to do the DMS physical inventory. I know we've got some tools that we've used over 20 plus years of doing these inventories and helping. If you got any questions on this, again, reach out to Kent at keyadvisors.com or info@keyadvisors.com. Thanks for taking time today. Kent, thanks for sitting in and leading us through this today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks all for joining, and we will have a recording if you want to share this among your coworkers. We'll send that out soon, next week.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions, Heidi?
Not for me, and I don't see any coming in. This is your last 2 minutes if you want to throw in a question for Keith or Kent. Okay, well then we'll close out. Have a wonderful Friday.
Thanks, Heidi. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.